Our expert panelists joining us today are Dr. Richard Palmquist, integrative veterinarian and owner of Centinela Animal Hospital. He's an author, lecturer, and teacher. Dr. Christina Chambreau, internationally known homeopathic veterinarian, lecturer, and teacher. Joan Ranquet, animal communicator, teacher, author, lecturer, and owner of Communication with All Life University. And Brendan Golia, professional pet trainer, behavior expert, and owner of OC Canine Coaching. Welcome to Smart Pet Talk. I'm your host, Anna DeVere. Our guest today is Susan Hartzler. She's an award-winning writer, professional blogger, and savvy public relations consultant. But before all that, one of her short stories about dogs was published in New World Library's Dogs and the Women Who Love Them, and another appeared in Atria's The Divinity of Dogs. Winner of the Angel on a Leash Award from the Dog Writers Association of America and the Pulitzer Prize from America's most dog-friendly city, Carmel, California, Susan has created a life filled with joy that revolves around her dogs. Alongside her current pack of Australian Shepherds, Seven and Paige Turner, she embarks on adventures, exploring dog-friendly destinations and sharing their escapades with the world through a variety of publications, including GetAventura.com, Fido Friendly Magazine, and California 101 Traveler's Guide, among others. As the creative force behind the new online dog shop, Dog Travel Gear, she curates and sells essential dog travel products and shares tips and trips on the Paws on the Go blog. Susan volunteers as a certified therapy dog team, spreading joy to high school students, including those with special needs. For her, it's all about the dogs. Welcome, Susan. What an honor and a privilege to have you with us.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
So let's just jump right into your latest book. I'm really excited. If you would hold up that book cover, it's The Peace Puppy, a memoir of caregiving and canine solace.
And that's my boy Baldwin.
Oh, you can hold up the other book too, because I fully want to read that. I want our listeners to know.
This is my first book.
Yeah, I want that book too. Tales from the Bark Side, about dating your dog. And I know many of my girlfriends will really relate to that. But we're going to dive into the Peace Puppy book. And full disclosure, the Peace Puppy is more than a memoir about Susan's journey on taking care of her dad. In her words, it's a testament to the transformative power of compassion. So, Susan, for those of us those who haven't read Peace Puppy, can you just kind of take us into your why? What inspired you to share your journey in such a candid and revealing way?
Well, first off, if I was going to write something, I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. I was going to write it. So in 2000, my mom died, and she was taking care of my dad, who had Parkinson's. And I volunteered as the single daughter to move home and take care of our dad. And, over the years, that was back in 2000. And over the years, whenever a friend's parent became ill or needed help or whatever, I've been the go-to person. So I learned just by doing it. And I felt like I had a lot to share. And I wanted to come out and show what goes into caretaking, but not a how-to book. It's more of, this is what I did. This is how I made it through. And really, I couldn't have made it through without my little rescue dog, Baldwin. While I was caring for my dad, he was caring for me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you describe your book as a personal roadmap. So not a how-to, again, about caretaking, but it's a very big and relevant topic. Most of us of a certain age find ourselves in that. Some people call it the sandwich years, where you're taking care of littles or you're taking care of somebody, your parents likely. And how unfair is that? I mean, we're going to break this down a little bit, but what surprised me about your book is it's also a journey into the self-love and your discovery of what you call needing to be validated as the good girl. You sort of alluded to that. Mm-hmm. And I'm fascinated by how the unconditional love of Baldwin helped your self-reflection, because I know in taking care of my own dad, everybody said, wow, you're getting a lot of brownie points there. I didn't feel like I was getting brownie points, but can you tell me a little bit about, just to begin, how Baldwin sort of helped you reflect on self-love and cut yourself some slack, maybe?
I'll tell you, just looking at that little face,
No.
it just, he was always there for me. He knew exactly what I needed. He became a therapy dog. He was my first therapy dog. And we
Mm.
visited kids in the hospital, which gave me perspective. It gave me huge perspective on what I was doing, why I was doing it. And the fact that I didn't ever get married and have kids, it
Mhm.
also fulfilled that need in me.
Yeah.
And that little dog just knew what to do. He knew what every kid needed. We went to County USC. And it was just amazing. So it would take me out of my day-to-day existence and
Yeah.
into this whole other world. And he'd show his unconditional love to these kids in ways that was just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's the reflection that you see in your dog and the way they are. And then you realize, wow, this is an extension of me. This is my joy. And I'm the companion to this wonderful being. Yeah.
I feel like for me, they're part of my heart. They're
Beautiful.
literally part of my heart.
And isn't that interesting? Because it's interesting to see that extension outside of your body, and it's like a mirror. So I get this whole self-reflection journey, and we're going to talk a lot more about that. But let's talk a little bit more about the subject of your book, and how did Baldwin influence your caregiving for your dad?
Well, for one thing, my dad had Parkinson's, and a small percentage of Parkinson's patients get Alzheimer's-like symptoms, and also the
Mm.
medication for it can give them Alzheimer's-like symptoms. So when things just got too much, rather than getting in some kind of argument or pulling my hair out, I would walk Baldwin.
Mm.
Just the physical getting out, he would be there, like, looking at me like, "Let's go on a walk. You're getting upset."
Like your
And
barometer.
yeah, and we would go on a walk, and by the time I came back, I'd calm down and I could be of more help. So
Mm.
just things like that, and then also it's just the perspective. He was always there. 2 o'clock in the morning. If my dad something happened with my dad, he was there. He was always there for me. It was never a burden. He was
Mhm.
always there. And I grew up with a little dog named Siesta. So I learned about that companionship and that deep, deep love one can have with a dog through Siesta. And
Mhm.
it lived on in Baldwin.
I don't know what it is about dogs in my own. Now I'm going to just disclose this because when my journey with my father, who I took care of and he passed in my home, was a 3-week journey. And everybody knew because he had no health insurance, so and no hospice care other than me. Everybody knew I'd bit off way more than I could chew, and there's a real caregiver fatigue. So to me, I can't imagine your journey. It's 3 years, yeah, with your dad. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a privilege and it's exhausting.
Yeah, I always say I'm not sure I would do it now knowing what I know,
Same.
but at the time, my mantra was just because something's difficult doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. I
Mhm.
felt a sense of purpose, and I felt like Baldwin supported that purpose.
Mm.
And I mean, my goodness, my dad did so much for me growing up. It felt like the least I could do would be to help him. The real problem I ran into was my family.
Mhm.
So that was an issue.
And please feel free to talk about that or not talk about that because I know you're the youngest, and
Yeah.
so I can relate. Let me go first and take the burden off of
Okay.
that because I know your lovely family's probably watching and everyone's cheering you on at this point. And don't mean to strike controversy with that statement, but I remember, my dad was single like your dad, and I had gone the journey. I mean, there were years leading up to his diagnosis and what came, but I remember when my sister got involved, it got really sticky.
Hmm.
She flew in from New York and she thought I was doing all the wrong things, and it was really that became the biggest burden. Was, wow, I don't need this extra layer of
Hmm.
stress. Unfortunately, it's a highly stressful situation, so you can relate to that. And
I can
again,
totally relate to that.
so again, did Baldwin intercede, and was he kind of like your anchor, kind of beyond words and the fray and the?
Yeah,
ugliness?
he was always
Yeah.
there for me, and if things got too intense with my brother and sister, again, I would just go on a walk, or I'd say, "Baldwin needs me," or, somehow he was always there to protect me. I think the thing is that they're well-meaning people,
Yeah.
but they're not living the day-to-day hell that is
Yeah.
caregiving. They can be caregiving.
Yeah.
And, I tried to involve them by sending emails, "Here's what's going on," but then they thought that I was complaining. So it was like every way I turned, I tried to get them involved, and that they didn't really want to be involved. And my sister really wanted to move him to a home, and he
Mhm.
didn't want to move to a home.
Yeah.
So it was really difficult maneuvering the family.
Isn't
And
that
I don't even
interesting?
remember either of them saying, "Hey, are you doing okay? Do you need a day off?" I quit my job, but then all my clients started coming to me.
Yeah.
So I started a business during this time too. And I
Wow.
was going, I did PR for the travel industry. So I'd
Mhm.
have to go out of town on press trips. And I hired my best friend who happened to have moved from first grade. She happened to have moved home with her parents like a couple of years prior.
Mhm.
And we just picked up like we were kids again. We were riding our bikes in the neighborhood. She had a dog. We'd walk all the time. So I
Yeah.
had a lot of support. I had a lot of support, but it wasn't my family. It was
Mm.
other people.
And
And
I'm sure that's not uncommon. I'm sure that it's a stressful situation, all the things. I mean, I say this about death is that it's personal and it hits everyone personally and differently. And most people are kind of a mess. I mean, it's never you're faced with your mortality. I was going to ask you because, when my dad passed away, absolutely everyone patted me on the head. Nobody wanted to ask what happened, how to go down, what was going on. I needed the dog, and and I had a dog. I'll talk about my dog situation, but for what I've learned about Baldwin, I mean, I can see why that was like a big piece of your need, right? And during the time. And I want to ask you this, was it therapeutic for you just to write the book and reflect afterwards?
it's been a lot of years. It's been 20 years since I did
Wow.
that. And I realized that I've been holding a lot of resentments and a lot of pain. So in writing the book, I was able to let go of a lot of things and
Mhm.
to appreciate what I'd been through. So, but during the writing of the book, it's like I relived things. So I had to take a lot of naps.
Yeah. It's funny how exhausting just thinking about it. Isn't that
Yeah,
crazy?
yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
And
Wait,
my
I can
current pack, they helped me with the writing of the book. So
the
I have
current
one, my older Aussie, his name is Seven. He was a rescue. He loves to cuddle and sleep. So
Mhm.
he was the one that slept with me when I needed to sleep. And then I have a younger one, Paige Turner, and she just makes me laugh. So between the two of them, I got through writing the book.
How interesting that you had dogs during and dogs after, and I really believe in this. We're gonna kinda get into the emotional side of this, but I wanna know if were there any specific moments from the book where your dog played a pivotal role in providing comfort? Like, can you give us an example? I know there's many, but can you give us one?
Well, you're talking about Baldwin or my current dog?
Yeah,
Baldwin.
Baldwin. Yeah.
Okay. So there was one time that my dad had to go to the hospital, and he had an impacted bowels, which I thought was funny at first, but it's
Okay.
very serious.
It is.
And I ended up having to give him an enema, which is not something a daughter really wants to do, but I made it through it.
Yeah.
Um, so when we got home from the hospital, Baldwin, who usually was like my shadow, was everywhere with me. He just looked after my dad. It was like that was his job that day. So
Wow.
it was very interesting to watch how he took that on. Like, well, I need to watch and make sure he's okay. And he stayed in the den with my dad, and that was that.
Mhm.
So there are a couple a couple of things where he didn't help. Like one time, my dad fell out of bed and cracked his head open.
Mm.
So we had I called the hospital. No, I just drove him to the hospital. That's right. So we had a thing on to get the blood. And when we took the washcloths off, Baldwin thought it'd be fun to play with that washcloth.
I'm sure. Like, oh, there's all kinds
So
of things.
that was like I wanted to strangle him. But even so, afterwards, it made me laugh,
Yeah.
He just gave perspective on things.
Do you think dogs in general then are good emotional caretakers no matter what we're going through in general?
In my experience, all my dogs have been good emotional caretakers, but
Yeah.
in different ways.
Mm.
Baldwin was a really special dog. He was a rescue. My mom bought him for me after I lost my first dog as an adult.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I mean, other people noticed it too. We just really had, I'm going to cry just talking about it, a special, special bond. I mean, that dog just knew me better than I knew myself. Um, and he was more of a person than a dog. So my
Mhm.
current pack, they're dogs. I
I get
honor
the
the
difference.
dogness of them,
Yeah.
and I love them just as much, but in a completely different way. Like I
Yeah.
said, my 1-7, he's a cuddle bug. He likes to cuddle with me and take naps, and he's always there. And then my other one is just, she's nuts. She's totally out of her mind.
I get it. We have a similar situation with the dogs that I watch. And then thanks for sharing that, because I think everyone's wondering right now that maybe in this situation, how do I get a Baldwin? Like, it's not like, I mean, there are service dogs and then there are just pieces of your heart, like you said, Susan. I want to share this story with you that I thought was so amazing. Now, my dog at the time, High Climb in McKinley, was a chocolate lab who was in advanced stages of age for a weight bearing dog, 14 years old. And my
Oh,
dad jokingly said, well, we're neck and neck. One of us is going to leave early. And I'm betting on, I'm betting on me. I don't know if that dog's going to do, you're kind of taking care of too. But that wasn't the truth. Kinley could, my dad was on the bottom floor. We were on the second floor. And I'd be exhausted. I'd go to bed. I was changing things and doing meds every 3 hours. And Kinley, who you'd think was a bump on the log, he could barely get up to the second floor, but he always made his way up. And if my dad stirred, like threw the covers off, Kinley would wake up and alert me.
wow.
And he wasn't like a Chihuahua, because I've had a Chihuahua that barks at leaves in the wind and rustling, but
Yeah.
Kinley knew I needed the alert. And it, I didn't need a baby monitor. It was crazy how he slipped into that little need and figured it out. And he was really, and my dad was such a dog person too. I mean, if anybody's going to escort him into the next, that dog came into everyone's life for a purpose. I really relate to your Baldwin story. And
Well,
I want
what I
to,
feel
yeah,
like with people saying, I want a Baldwin, if you open your heart, the dog that you need will
yeah.
come into your life. I really needed Baldwin at that time, but I can't imagine life without Seven and Paige Turner now. I mean,
For a
totally
very different reason. Yeah. Well, I love that your dogs now have adventures with you. It's all about the fun. I mean, that's the aftermath of caregiving is, go out and live with gusto. So we always get what we need. And I wonder, like, what kind of takeaways are you hoping that people will have from reading the book?
Well, I hope that they'll get a sense of what it takes to be a caregiver. And I hope that they will start appreciating what caregivers do, because it's a selfless job. I mean, yes, people go, "Oh, you're such an angel," but it's not that. I kept saying,
Mhm.
"Well, I'm not Mother Teresa,
Mhm. Yeah,
I'm doing the best I can, and sometimes I lost my shit, excuse my expression.
100%. Sometimes I got,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
It's weird, especially if it's your parent, because they look
Mhm.
the same and their voice sounds the same, but they're not the same. So
Mm-mm.
it's hard. It's difficult. I remember
Mhm.
one time, my dad, like I said before, had hallucinations, and one time I came home. Usually they were good, like he thought he was having lunch with Hillary Clinton one day.
Fantastic.
Great. But one time I came home and he said, "Why'd you do it?" I'm like, "Why'd I do what? Why'd you rob that bank?" There was a bank robbery on the news. So, and
Oh.
it sounds like something so stupid, but it just crushed me. It's like, here I am. I
I
said, Dad,
know.
have you heard of elder abuse? Well, you're abusing me.
You know what? I can relate. And sadly, I have a story. I mean, I got to the point with my dad where he couldn't lift his own spoon and he couldn't swallow. And yet we got into an argument 5 days before he passed. It reminded me of like Coco the gorilla. Like he was not going to be communicating with me and he was mad at me, but I still had to feed him the oatmeal and he'd take a bite and go, like, I'm not looking at you.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, really? Because I got a lot of other things on the chore list that are very unpleasant.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think more than anything, that's what I appreciate. The affinity that I feel for you is that you've nailed it with the tremendous weight of caregiving. So if you are in that position listening to this, I mean, what a great companion book to anybody, and anybody that just wants to, fall in love with a dog and then appreciate the nuances of dogs in her life. I mean, you don't have to have the experience you've gone through to appreciate that book.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
everybody has a mother and father. So there's stuff about just being part of a family in there.
And I appreciate that too. I think the quote I've heard about love is the nature of love is loss. It's inevitable.
Ooh,
Yeah. And it's inevitable. And we'd go through that cycle a lot sooner having pets.
yeah.
And
I know.
unfortunately, right? It's
Yeah.
part of life. And I think that the parent child relationship is unique in that, nothing brings you closer to your own feelings about you and your mortality than taking care of a parent and letting them cross over.
Yeah.
And that's heavy, heavy stuff. But
It's
there's a
heavy.
lot of brightness, in your story about Baldwin. And I appreciate, I just appreciate getting to know him through you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that
Um,
boy.
yeah. Can you talk, if you will, a little bit about the presence of him in your life and the routine of dog sports and how it kind of provided that
Oh,
sense of
well, this
normalcy?
was this was a great thing too, and I got my dad involved in it. I took up agility because Baldwin was a rescue puli, which is a Hungarian sheepdog, so he's part of the herding family.
Yeah.
So he definitely needed a job. Everybody told me he needs a job. He needs a job.
Hmm.
So I found out in my puppy class, which he came in first. Um, I found out about dog agility because the trainer had a few, obstacles in the class. And I thought it was just like a park where you'd go and play on the obstacles and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
didn't know that there was this whole world with competitions and classes. And
Sure.
so my dad would go with me to the classes, and it just made me feel like a kid again. Dad, did you see that? And he liked it. He was outside. It was
Mhm.
something we could do together. It kept Baldwin busy. My
Yeah.
dad would go with me to the competitions, and um, Baldwin just became a superstar. He loved agility, and that was really a fun thing for us to do. And again, it gave everything perspective. It was my fun outlet, and
Mhm.
never let me down.
Mhm. I love that.
And I met a whole new group of people who I would have never met. One of the gals I met was a sex crimes cop. I mean,
Oh,
I was
wow.
a PR agent, so
Right. It's one slice of life, like, right? I
and she would
know.
actually, when I was gone on press trips, she would come over and look in on my dad and look in on Baldwin, and I really got to develop a lot of people helping a community,
Mm.
my tribe. So that was really, really cool.
Did you ever feel like this? Because I feel like people that become parents, and I didn't know this at the time, I wasn't a parent, but people that become parents experience this sort of slowed down to the speed of presence. Like there's no future, there's no yesterday. This is all we're doing today. And it's an incredible sense. So there's also like there's a lot of beauty in being present for that much time. I don't know if you experience that day by day in moments, or if the dog helped you with that sort of feeling. You've described it a little bit.
Yeah,
Did you
well,
feel
I
like
I
that?
feel like that's how dogs live in the present moment,
Right.
and I did learn to do that because otherwise, why would I get up? It was so scary,
Yeah.
I had to make sure his medications were okay. I had to, Yeah, there was a lot that I had to do.
Yeah, a
And
lot of problem solving.
yeah, a lot of problem solving.
Yeah, and I imagine then the dog just kinda can carefully entrain you away like, when you've done enough or too much or you've overextended yourself, do you feel that dogs can like, obvious this is a very rudimentary question, but that dogs can really sense your emotional need or life in a
You know,
specific way?
I don't know about all dogs
Okay.
because I only have the experience with mine, but mine, and the herding breeds, they definitely have uh, an extra sense.
Mm.
They definitely have that. They can tell when you're upset. Although Paige Turner, like I'll pretend to cry, and she's just like, I don't care.
I don't know what that is. Go have your pity party elsewhere.
Exactly. Come on, let's go. Let's go home.
Oh.
So, I think each dog, if it depends on the person. If they can open their heart up enough, yes.
Mm.
My first Australian Shepherd, I got with when I had Baldwin, her name was Bliss. I'll tell you, by the end of her life, she read my mind. She
Mhm.
was my first actress. My dogs are actors and models. In fact, Paige
Mhm.
Turner has a job coming up on the 15th. But
Fantastic.
I never worried about it because the agents, they never tell you what you're going to have to do. Like they go, well, the dog has to get in a car, and then it's a whole huge thing. But Bliss, I don't know how. We'd get there and I'd just think about what she needed to do and she'd do it. She'd never done it
Mhm.
before, but she would just do it. It was
Mhm.
amazing. So I do think that if you are open to seeing it, dogs will help you with everything, with your emotions. They definitely have that capability.
Mhm. I know from practical advice standpoint, your advice is get a dog when you're
Yeah.
going through that caregiver situation. You've outlined it so beautifully, and I appreciate your transparency in the book and your willingness to share. Do you have any like, as a empathetically, what would you like to leave caregivers with as a message?
I'd like to say thank you for all your work. And I hope you're getting the support that you need.
I will receive that as one person who's been through it and reflect it back to you. I thank you for bringing a difficult topic to light. I think there's so many ways dogs enrich our emotional life, but
Oh,
I would agree with you that I would pay special attention to those who are deeply, deeply entrenched, whether by profession or going through that for a parent or a loved one. Like I would give, yourself a lot of grace and
grace is a perfect term.
yeah, there's a lot happening all around that situation that is inexplainable, is unexpected, is highs and lows, and I anybody that really I mean, I say anybody that really wants to talk about, how a dog is a self, please read this book. Like, don't wait till your hour of need because you don't need to be afraid of it. You've really taken a treatment of a book and given very human, digestible, and emotionally supportive, life lessons, so thank you for that.
Thank you. I so
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, and also, fair disclosure, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your other book that you held up.
Whoa, I'm not single. I have a dog. So this was my debut memoir, and I'm 66 now. So I grew up in an era where people weren't staying single and not having kids. And honestly, that's what I wanted to get married and have kids.
Hmm.
My problem is I had a bad picker.
I can relate to that too.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
tried everything to change
Yeah.
my bad picker, but it just never changed. It
Mm.
was so embedded in me
Mhm.
that I feel lucky that I never got married. I just knew that there were a lot of people out there with the same situation, and I was right. I got letters from people, I got emails from people, I got phone calls, men too, who were bad pickers with the women they chose. So, I believe that there's nothing wrong with being single. There is something wrong with being with the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I just chose not to date anymore and to really embrace the life I had versus the life I yearned for in my
Mm-hmm.
imagination. So I was just hoping that other people might be in the same boat, or even if they're not. Again, it's about me and a dog who went on dates with me. Because my first dog is an adult blondie, and I could that was my line in the sand. I could definitely tell a lot if the man was going to be right for me or not by how they responded to the fact that I would bring a dog on a date with me.
I think it's perfect. I think no matter what you're going through, it's a perfect test of, where am I at in life? I love what you said about Baldwin being an extension of your heart. Yeah. And you are a perfect picker when it comes
Yes.
to your dog companions. And what a great thing to know about yourself, right? I can't get enough of this. I really want listeners to first of all find out how they can pick up your books plural, and I know you've written a ton as a blogger. Give me a shout out for all things wonderful from Susan Hartzler.
Okay, well, they can look up susanhartzler.com. That's HARTZLER. My books are also available on Amazon, on my publisher, McFarland, who's my publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And but when you look up the I'm Not Single, there's lots of T-shirts and stuff that say that.
Great.
So it's best to look up my last name, Susan Hartzler.
Mm-hmm.
And they can go to Dog Travel Gear and follow my blog, Pause on the Go. It's www.dogtravelgear.com. And they can support me by buying cool stuff for their dogs.
Yeah, and then you give tips on trips and everything. That's fantastic.
So I give tips on trips that I've taken, on how to take trips, on, a lot of people come to me, they don't drive their dog anywhere because their dog gets sick in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my first dog is an adult blondie who's in the first book. She did that. So I went to my vet and I found out how to fix that. So, I talk about that in a blog post. And then I also talk about places I want to go, places I've been. Like there's Dog Mountain in St. Johnsbury, Vermont that I really want to go to. They have a dog chapel there, and it just looks like heaven on earth. So there's places I want to go. There's places I've been. And I just want to help people enjoy their beloved four-legged family member.
Susan, you are heaven on earth. I'm very privileged to talk to you and have this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna.
Yeah.
The
big heart for Hartzler.
Yeah.
And thank you for helping us raise our animal IQ. I always say that, but you know what? Thanks for helping us raise our emotional animal IQ today. Really. It reminds me of something that Judy Desmond said. A dog is the only thing that can mend a crack in your broken heart.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's so true.
Great.
Right. Well, we hope you'll join us again. And until then, please love your pets. Medical information obtained from our website or the live show is not intended to be a substitute for professional care. If your pet has or you suspect they might have an illness or other medical condition, you should consult a healthcare provider. The opinions expressed on this TV program are not necessarily those of Smart Pet Talk, this TV show, or their sponsors. For all questions or info on sponsorship, email us at info@smartpettalk.com or visit our website at smartpettalk.com.